It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. At least 6 people killed as a series of powerful earthquakes hit Japan, triggering tsunami warnings. Risks of fires and landslides in the aftermath, with people trapped under collapsed buildings. Ready to attack? The Defence Secretary's warning that the UK will hit back against Houthi rebels targeting ships in the Red Sea. Small boat crossings fall by more than a third in 2023, but last year was still the second highest number on record. A teenage boy who died after being stabbed in North London during New Year's Eve celebrations is named as Harry Pittman.
Double four for a semi-final spot. There is no sign of this teenage dream coming to an end.
And 16-year-old darts wonder kid Luke Littler is through to the World Championship semi-finals.
If I keep it up, I've got a good chance now. Now I am dreaming. I'm 2 games away.
And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Hello, good evening. Japan was struck by more than 80 earthquakes today, including one measuring 7.6 magnitude, tearing down homes and buildings. This evening, there are reports of at least 6 deaths. People were told to evacuate several areas along the west coast and head to higher ground after the authorities issued a major tsunami warning. Tens of thousands of people have been left without power. Well, the earthquakes started hitting Japan from around 4 p.m. local time. Most of the earthquakes centred around Ishikawa and Toyama prefectures on the west coast of Japan's main island. Initially, there were fears of a tsunami hitting the coastline near Noto, which is close to the epicentre, but that has now been downgraded. There are warnings more tremors could follow. Sky's Asia correspondent Helen Ann Smith has this report.
On the western shore of Honshu Island, the earth begins to tremble. Towns and cities start to shake as a series of quakes rock parts of central Japan. The information board at a station in Ishikawa district swings wildly. Passengers on a train gasp for air. It's not clear how many people have been killed or injured, but officials have reported 6 incidents of people being buried under rubble. It is likely the death toll will rise. Scores of strong earthquakes have been recorded by Japan's seismic monitor, including one with a magnitude of 7.6. And tsunami warnings have been issued up and down the coast, possibly as large as 5 metres high. Fearing the deadly surge, residents have been ordered to evacuate, to flee. Every minute counts, says government officials. That message reiterated in a national broadcast by the country's Prime Minister Kishida. Pay attention, he said. If you live in a region where tsunamis are expected, evacuate to higher ground. Across a large area, roads have closed, pipes have burst, and many homes have been damaged or left without power as the earth shudders beneath their feet. In Kanazawa City, stone lanterns wobble at an ancient Buddhist shrine, while visitors scrambled for safety.
This was like several times that you can feel this earthquake, and it just didn't feel normal. It didn't feel like the normal, you got an earthquake for, tremors for a couple of minutes. This felt more significant than that, and it felt a lot more dangerous.
The people of Japan anticipate and prepare for quakes and tsunamis. The infrastructure and warning systems are good. But this latest episode has deeply unsettled the nation. Helen Ann Smith, Sky News.
Well, Sky Science editor Tom Clark's been analysing the impact of the earthquake.
This is a major earthquake and aftershocks even for seismically active Japan. 7.6 on the magnitude scale and shallow and dangerously close to shore. And with that comes the risk of powerful tsunami waves. Alerts are in place for much of the west coast of the Honshu Island, with the greatest risk close to the shallow epicentre of the quake. Initially, officials feared waves of up to 5 metres in height, with the most serious alert, a major tsunami warning, issued for the area here in purple. After a few hours, this was downgraded, but officials had every reason to be cautious. 30 years ago, hundreds of miles to the north, another West Coast earthquake of similar size caused a 3-metre tsunami wave that led to more than 200 fatalities in Japan and on the other side of the Sea of Japan in southeastern Russia. But earthquakes on this side of the country are far less powerful than on the east coast. This map is cluttered with 100 years of Japan's earthquake history. The larger the circle, the bigger the quake. This is the catastrophic 1923 Tokyo earthquake and fire, and here in red, the 2011 earthquake near Fukushima that caused the worst tsunami in modern Japanese history. A 15-metre wave, in places 40 metres, sweeping inland for miles. The tsunami killed 20,000 people as towns were inundated. 200,000 were made homeless or evacuated after meltdowns at the Fukushima nuclear complex. A repeat of this is what Japan fears most. Thankfully, this latest quake was 40 times weaker than in 2011. The resulting tsunami waves tiny in comparison, but alerts for the West Coast will likely remain in place until officials have taken stock of what's happened and seen data from tide gauges, some of which were damaged in the earthquake, to give them hard evidence that the coast is clear.
Now, the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has said that the UK will not hesitate to take direct action against Houthi rebels who've been targeting ships in the Red Sea. His comments come after the US destroyed 3 boats belonging to the Iran-backed Yemeni rebel group yesterday. Houthi rebels have been targeting vessels in the Red Sea since November in a show of support for Hamas. Sky correspondent Nicole Johnson reports.
In November, Houthi gunmen dropped out of a helicopter, staging an audacious attack on a cargo ship. This weekend, they were back at it. A ship from the company Maersk attacked twice in 24 hours. The second time, 4 small Houthi boats surrounded it. The US sank 3 of them, killing at least 10 fighters.
It's been dramatic days in the Red Sea, one of the world's most important trading routes. And some of the biggest global shipping companies are now avoiding the route altogether, instead sailing around the southern tip of Africa. But the UK and the US say this can't go on.
A warning of direct action from Defence Secretary Grant Shapps. The Houthi should be under no misunderstanding. We are committed to holding malign actors accountable for unlawful seizures and attacks. Iran, which backs the Houthis, blames the UK and the US for rising regional tension.
Activities by the US and Britain in the Red Sea are in line with the role of those 2 countries in intensifying instability and insecurity in the regional waters, especially in the Red Sea. Such moves will not help the region's stability and security at all. Their acts will raise regional and international concern about the security of the region.
The fear is war in Gaza will spill over into the rest of the region. On New Year's, Hamas fired rockets towards Tel Aviv, and Israel bombed Gaza. It's hell. Imagine packing up. What do you take? This is the 6th time the Al-Wagha family has fled.
To avoid being hit, we went to Al-Maghaza camp when they attacked us with missiles. It was a dark night and 4 people were killed. As you see, here there is nothing, no sign of life.
The nights are long. No electricity, only grief.
My tragedy lives inside me. The outside world does not feel it at all. Let them have their celebrations and leave me to live my tragedy.
In Gaza, it's endless days and endless nights, with no end to the suffering. Nicole Johnston, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Now, the number of people making the journey across the Channel on small boats in 2023 dropped by more than a third compared to the previous year. It's the first time there's been a year-on-year decrease since records began. But the overall figure of 29,432 is still higher than 2021. Sky's political correspondent Tamara Cohen reports.
A concrete plan to stop the boats.
When I said I would stop the boats, I meant it. I want to get this thing done and I want to stop the boats.
That was last year's resolution, and ministers are hailing some progress made, with small boat crossings down by a third. But with the election looming, will it get any better this year? The union representing border staff are unsure.
Just because one route is made more difficult, it doesn't stop the flow. They simply find another route. The working assumption for 2024 is that numbers will increase slightly on 2023. There's no diminution in the numbers that are flowing up into and through Europe. And if the weather and the wave heights are better for crossings, we will see larger numbers.
According to the latest government figures, 29,432 people crossed the Channel in small boats in 2023. That's 36% lower than the previous year, when 45,774 made the crossing. But it's still the second highest figure on record. Charities say most of the people boarding these boats meet the criteria to be granted asylum.
The numbers that came in 2023 are essentially the same as 2 years previously, before the high numbers of those coming from Albania. And that tells a very clear story that people are coming from countries like Afghanistan, from countries like Iran, from countries like Syria, where there's either war or oppression.
As the new year begins, some Conservatives fear the Prime Minister is setting himself up for failure. He's made big promises, both on what he's branded illegal migration, but also the numbers of people coming here legally too. Both are fraught with difficulty, and time is running out. New restrictions have come into force to stop most international students at UK universities bringing family members with them. The Home Secretary says it will cut numbers of legal migrants by tens of thousands. The Conservatives start the year behind in the polls. Migration is just one of the problems on the horizon. Tamara Cohen, Sky News, Westminster.
Police have named a teenage boy who died after being stabbed in North London during New Year's Eve celebrations. 16-year-old Harry Pittman was attacked on Primrose Hill in the North London borough of Camden and died at the scene shortly before midnight on Sunday. Another 16-year-old has been arrested on suspicion of murder and remains in custody. Police are appealing for anyone with information to get in touch.
We need to hear from anybody who saw anything that may be significant. If you have not yet come forward to the police, please make contact now. I know that many people have images and footage from Primrose Hill, especially around the time of the murder. I urge them to share that material with us.
Israel's Supreme Court has struck down a controversial law passed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government that reduced some of the High Court's powers. The law, passed in July, prevented judges from quashing government decisions that they deem unreasonable. It caused widespread protests. Volodymyr Zelensky has promised to intensify the fighting against Russia in his New Year address. The Ukrainian president says his troops became stronger in 2023 and will take that power into the next 12 months. He also says they'll produce 1 million first-person view drones to help them in the conflict as attacks against his country continue.
And next year, the enemy will feel the wrath of domestic production. Our weapons, our equipment, artillery, our shells, our drones, our naval greetings to the enemy, and at least 1 million Ukrainian FPV drones. All of which we will generously use on land, in the sky, and of course at sea, our Black Sea.
US voters will head to the polls in November for the country's presidential election. Despite facing 91 charges across 4 criminal trials, former President Donald Trump could still sit in the Oval Office once again. But an ex-federal prosecutor has told Sky News he believes Mr. Trump will be convicted in at least one case. Our US correspondent James Matthews reports.
The singing you hear is coming from inside this prison. January 6 prisoners behind bars in Washington, D.C. Every night around 9 p.m. they sing their national anthem, relayed by phone to supporters who gather outside.
Stephen Capuccio, Matthew Caspel, Donald Chilcote.
They recite a January the 6th prisoner
Richard
list.
Harris, Joshua Haynes,
Hero.
Isaiah Farnsworth,
Hero.
Brandon
In 2024,
Fellows,
will the name Donald Trump be added?
Hello, Frank.
Prosecutors say he inspired Capitol rioters.
My name's James Matthews. I'm from Sky News in the UK.
We put that to one. Frank Justino.
I was not inspired by anybody to do any sort of conviction. The way I see it, I never really committed a crime. A lot of people didn't commit any crimes. They were just there to peacefully protest.
You'll probably see the jury...
The test of criminality lies in Trump's courtroom calendar. He faces 4 criminal trials.
91 felony charges. I think all of these cases, he faces real legal jeopardy.
We asked former prosecutor Glenn Kirshner to talk us through the Trump trials ahead.
What that will do is it will probably...
The 4th of March is marked down as the start date for his January 6 trial.
We fight like hell.
He's accused of efforts to overturn the result of the 2020 election, leading to riots at the Capitol.
I think the odds of a conviction are extremely high. I believe that the testimony we will see will come from a chorus of Republican voices. It makes it much more difficult for a defendant, for Donald Trump, for a fellow Republican to say they're all out to get me. Interestingly, the one in New York is set for trial.
After March the 4th, March the 25th is penciled in for the New York State trial on hush money payments to a former porn star and alleged false accounting.
Will you come speak to us, President Trump?
The next due date in court is for the alleged mishandling of classified documents at his Florida home. That's on the 20th of May.
Mr. Trump, why were you holding nuclear secrets, sir?
Charging Donald J. Trump with felony violations of our national security laws.
In the state of Georgia, the prosecution has asked for an August the 5th trial date on charges of trying to overturn the 2020 election result.
Arising from a criminal conspiracy to overturn the results.
They won't all take place before Election Day on November the 5th, but the January 6th trial should.
Nobody knows if he will go to jail, but I believe the judge, I believe the prosecution team, as headed up by Jack Smith, understand that if you don't punish that dramatic wrongdoing, those democracy-busting crimes, then you're giving the next aspiring dictator a green light to do it all over again.
Donald Trump's court diary will intersect sharply with the campaign trail. The trial of his alleged involvement in riots over there will begin in the courtroom here the day before Super Tuesday, a big voting day in terms of the selection of presidential candidates. Then there's a Republican convention in July. The party may be faced with the choice of a convicted criminal as their candidate for the White House.
So Father, we ask that you allow...
Prison and the prospect of conviction complicate the politics for Donald Trump. A recent poll showed that in key battleground states, if he's convicted, 6% of voters would switch their vote to Joe Biden. It could be enough to swing the election. How the politics play out will be a concern for the former president, but it won't be the only one. James Matthews, Sky News, in Washington.
Now, they do say that X marks the spot, and the number of pieces of treasure found in 2022 in the UK was the highest since the 90s. Sky's Tom Cheshire has gone metal detecting with a YouTuber and visited the museum, which has also benefited most from the work of the treasure hunters.
A top secret location in Hampshire, surveyed by only one young man and a group of indifferent cows. Patrick Hooper, better known on YouTube as Paddy Detects, is combing the land for treasure. Not wooden chests overflowing with gleaming coins.
Oh, that's a good signal.
Treasure is the technical legal term for anything over 200 years old and containing some precious metal. What is it about detecting that you like doing?
I love detecting because of the history and also just because treasure hunting, really. You go out on a field and sometimes you find junk all day, but you never know. It could be one day, one signal that you could get something that changes your life forever. I'd recommend sweeping like a rainbow, like you're painting a rainbow, brushing the grass.
Brushing the grass, okay. There.
There we go. That's definitely a signal. I'm sure you'll be able to get it just there.
All right, here we go. This is my first find. I'm so excited. It's the shotgun case.
It is a shotgun case.
It's the shotgun case. But others have been more lucky. In 1996, there were just 24 treasure cases, instances where a found item is reported as treasure. The provisional figure for reported treasure finds in 2022 is 1,378. It's the highest figure since 1996 and the 9th year in a row when reported treasure finds exceeded 1,000. 81 finds were discovered in Kent. Hampshire, where we were detecting earlier with Paddy, is the second biggest hotspot, with 83 finds. And Norfolk was top, with 95 finds. The Norwich Castle Museum, in that county, acquired the highest number of finds of any institution. Any treasure found by detectorists must, by law, be reported, so that museums have the opportunity to acquire anything of cultural and historical significance. Objects like this, a pendant from the 7th century, fragments of a silver sword pommel from the 8th century, and this Bronze Age gold ring, some 2,500 years old. If you look at the data, we're seeing this absolute boom in treasure finds. What's driving that?
Agriculture with bigger and bigger equipment, with going deeper and deeper into the plough soil. We're seeing more and more people engaged in metal detecting as well, but also those machines are getting more and more powerful. They're able to seek deeper and deeper.
A golden age, but no gold coins for Paddy, today at least. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Hampshire.
Now, his exploits so far have launched him into the limelight, and today Luke Littler got through to the semi-finals of the World Darts Championships at Alexandra Palace. The 16-year-old continued his fairy tale run in the tournament with a comfortable win over the 28th seed Brendan Dolan, making him the youngest person ever to reach the final four. Sky's Sadia Chowdhury reports.
It shows the plan is working.
Nicknamed the Nuke, and you can see why. Luke Littler is a sensation and he's just 16. He stormed to a 4-0 lead against Northern Irishman Brendan Dolan before sealing today's quarter-final with a 5-1 win. Confidence is oozing.
Wow, I'm in a semi-final on my debut. I'm glad to get here, I've earned it. I've got a good chance now. Now I am dreaming, I'm 2 games away.
The teenager from Warrington says he started playing darts as a toddler.
Practice led to perfection. Luke Littler is the youngest player to reach the last 4 of the World Championship. And don't forget, this is his debut.
If they'd never heard his name before, surely they won't forget it soon.
Luke Littler, he's a sensation.
Can't believe he's like 16 and playing so
16?
well. Amazing.
He's pretty sensational, to be fair to him, so yeah, fair play.
Luke, the Nuke Littler, now faces Rob Cross in tomorrow's semi-final. This lot think he'll go all the way.
He has definitely a chance to win the title.
He's got every chance.
Yeah.
Every chance.
He is class. I mean, 16 years of age, and he's doing that.
Ask you what you were doing at the age of 16?
Not playing darts. Drinking. Like today.
Too young for that for the Nuke. Instead, this 16-year-old is on the cusp of making one of the greatest sporting stories of all time. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News, at the World Darts Championship in London.
We're certainly going to be talking about him for many days to come, but let's get the rest of today's sport from the Sky Sports News.
Hello again. Liverpool have made an emphatic start to 2024 with a 4-2 win over Newcastle to go 3 points clear at the top of the Premier League. At a wet and windy Anfield, Liverpool had the chance to go in front in the first half when Luis Diaz was brought down in the area. Mo Salah stepped up, but his penalty was saved by Martin Dubravka. Trent Alexander-Arnold couldn't find the target on the follow-up. All 6 goals came in a thrilling second half. Salah made amends for his penalty miss early on in the second period to put Liverpool in front. 5 minutes later, Newcastle equalised with a goal from Alexander Isak. Liverpool had plenty of chances to go in front again and eventually got their second of the game with a goal from Curtis Jones. Salah then set up Cody Gakpo to make it 3-1. Newcastle were far from done though, and a header from Sven Botman made it 3-2. Liverpool's fourth goal came when substitute Diogo Jota went down in the area following what looked like just a slight touch from Dubravka. Player of the match, Salah, didn't miss from the spot this time. Will Leicester City be heading back to the Premier League in 2024? They beat Huddersfield 4-1 to move 10 points clear at the top of the Championship. This was the first of 2 goals for Tom Cannon. Ipswich in second dropped points after a goalless draw at Stoke. Third place Southampton also dropped points after a 1-1 draw at Norwich. Josh Sargent here equalising for the home side after Adam Armstrong had put Southampton in front. Leeds in fourth remain unbeaten at home this season after a 3-0 win over Wayne Rooney's Birmingham. Dan James here scoring their second just before the break. In rugby's Championship, top of the table, Leinster lost for only the second time this season. They were beaten 22-21 by Ulster. Nick Timoney crossed the line with 2 of Ulster's 3 tries. The win moves them up to 4th in the table. Leinster stay top, 2 points clear of Benetton. Wins 2 for Connaught, Ospreys and Dragons. Disappointment, though, for Andy Murray at the start of 2024. He lost in 3 sets to Grigor Dimitrov in the first round of the Brisbane International Tournament. Murray, who's won this event twice in his career, took the first set 6-4, then lost the next 2, 7-5, 6-2. Murray plans to play in an exhibition tournament in Melbourne next week before the start of the Australian Open later this month. There's more now on Sky Sports News. We're back later.
Thanks very much, Dave. Well, after last night's spectacular display, thousands of people gathered in central London today for the capital's New Year's Day parade. 8,000 performers from around the world marched from Green Park to Westminster. Looks like they dodged the rain. Hundreds of thousands of people lined up along the route. The streets were filled with acts, including marching bands, cheerleaders, dancers, as well as representatives from various London boroughs. Giant inflatable balloons were out and about as well, each up to 20 feet high, bobbing along the route. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in our press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons, and also here in the studio by the I columnist, Yasmin Alavi-Brown. We'll be talking to both of those after the break, and among the stories we'll be discussing this on the front of the I, their headline, Red Sea rebel attack set to drive up food prices in the UK. That and the rest of the day's news after this short break. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. At least 6 people have died after a powerful earthquake struck Japan's west coast, triggering tsunami warnings. Rishi Sunak tonight pledged UK support to Japan. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has said that the UK will not hesitate to take direct action against Houthi rebels targeting cargo ships in the Red Sea. And provisional figures have shown a 36% drop in the number of illegal small boat crossings in 2023, the first time it's fallen year on year. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. And in the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons, and also the I columnist, Yasmin Alabai-Brown. So let's see what's on the front of some of those pages, starting with The Guardian, which says Ofsted has bowed to pressure and halted school inspections after the suicide of head teacher Ruth Perry when her school in Reading was downgraded. The Telegraph says there was a record number of excess deaths last year amid repeated strikes by workers in the NHS and the continued cost of the COVID pandemic. The Sun pictures 16-year-old Harry Pittman, the London boy stabbed to death during the New Year celebrations last night. The Eye leads with news that attacks on merchant shipping by Houthi rebels from Yemen in the Red Sea are expected to drive up food prices here in Britain. The Mail reports that police are investigating the first case of rape in the metaverse after a child was attacked in a virtual reality video game. The Mirror has a poll which shows that 2/3 of people want a general election by the summer because the country is tired of Tory rule. The Express speaks to Rishi Sunak, who insists that his relentless action to drive down illegal migration and stop the small boats crossings the Channel is working. The Financial Times uses international edition says that millions of dollars worth of COVID-19 antiviral drugs made by Pfizer have gone to waste because rules on who can have them have left them past their expiry date. And maybe to coincide with the current World Championships, The Star has a poll which reveals that darts players apparently make the best lovers, while table tennis players are the worst. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch with us. Well, to take us through them, we'll obviously get their reaction on their sporting prowess. The editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons, and the I columnist, Yasmin Alabai-Brown, here in the studio. Great to see you both. Well, let's start straight away with the Financial Times and its international edition, which has this story about the Japanese earthquake triggering tsunami warnings. As we record this, 7 people believed to have died. But Yasmin, to you in the studio, first of all, I mean, given the scale of this, 7.6 magnitude, a similar earthquake to the one that was in Turkey not that long ago, astonishing that just 7 people have lost their lives.
I know, but you know, so housing in Japan and so on is geared to these kinds of events which happen a lot. But I have read that if this carries on, there could be another big tsunami, which surely, you know, would be the next big disaster, because the magnitude of 7.6, and yet only 4. It says 4 here, and then
yes, and it rose to 7 in sort of the last hour.
Yeah, and there must be more. I'm sure there will be. The number will go up, but yes, it's remarkable.
And Jake, I spoke to an earthquake expert a little while ago, and he was explaining about how the 2 things that he thinks have kept the death rate low are the preparedness that they have in terms of the culture in Japan. Kids are taught about what happens when they feel an earthquake coming, how to react in school, but also the construction of their homes. There's a lot that the rest of the world could learn from this, isn't there?
That's right. I mean, by comparison to Turkey, in Turkey, there was a lot of cowboy building going on, which led to buildings collapsing very easily. Whereas in Japan, they're much more rigorous with regard to building their accommodation so that they won't collapse on people very easily. But the spectre, of course, that's hanging over this is the tsunami of 2011, which followed a 9-point on the Richter scale earthquake rather than 7.6 this time. And in 2011, 18,000 people were killed. And the Fukushima reactor, of course, leaked, causing a great radioactive disaster, one of the biggest that we've seen since the war. And that, experts have said, is not going to happen this time. There's no risk of radioactive leakage. But of course, Japan is one of the most seismically active countries in the world. It's located on what's called the Pacific Ring of Fire, where lots of tectonic plates meet. And as a result, it suffers from a lot of these sorts of natural phenomena. And thank God the Japanese have grown very good in building properties that won't collapse very easily.
Indeed. Well, let's skip on to the I newspaper. And Yasmin, its front page does have a picture of the earthquakes in Japan and some of the impact of them. But its headline is about the Red Sea rebel attacks. And this has been going on now, well, since the October the 7th and since what happened between Hamas and Israel. It's now appearing that it's going to start affecting food prices here in the UK. Do you think we're all going to suddenly start paying a little bit more attention to it?
Yes, but I don't think that's the thing that most worries me. The thing that most worries me at the moment, that this new front, if you like, is already things going on in the Lebanon border. There's, the First World War was a kind of jigsaw that came together with very disparate pieces. Nobody expected these different conflicts and conflagrations to come together. This is what I fear we are heading towards now, that we will end up with a kind of terrible World War III before we've realized how far this conflict is spreading. So I feel, although it's my newspaper and I love all the people who work there, I don't think food prices is what worries me at the moment.
OK. Jake, do you have the same fear that this is escalating out of all control?
I think that Yasmin's absolutely right to raise that fear that this could become a far wider and broader global conflict. I mean, please God, it doesn't happen, but it could in 2024. I mean, let's not forget that the Houthis really are being run, funded and managed by the Iranians. They have long had this policy of using proxy militia around the region to carry out their dirty work, which then allows them a certain level of plausible deniability when it comes to retaliation. And so far, the Americans and the Western coalition has not retaliated on Iranian soil or on Iranian assets, naval assets or anything else. And so the deterrent is quite weak and they're getting away with it, if you like. But Yasmin's right. You've got the Iranians, you've got the Russians, you've got the Chinese, who are the three main powers who are forming this kind of alliance against the West, as well as North Korea and other smaller groups as well. And there is a real... This will spiral out of control, of course.
But I also don't see it as the West being blameless. I think Saudi Arabia has been the proxy for the West with its war in the Yemen, which has been relentless for how many years? So I don't agree in one sense that this is the West versus the rest. It's people not thinking about the next phase, which always is unpredictable and unpredicted. And I think I'm just hoping that some wise people wise up and start to realise what could happen.
We are definitely seeing a polarisation, aren't we? A polarisation of anti-Western forces, Russia, China, and mainly Iran against the America and Western allies.
Saudi Arabia isn't Western. Saudi Arabia is, in my view, an evil empire. It really is. Yeah, but you can't just talk about Iran.
The only way to really ensure that Iran draws its horns in is to restore
Jake, I'm going to say this.
OK, let's hear what Jake's saying, though, Yasmin. Sorry. Jake, we just didn't quite get that. Do you want to say it again?
Yeah, I mean, the Iranians they play this game whereby they push the boundaries again and again. We saw it with the nuclear deal. We've seen it with Hezbollah. We've seen it with Hamas. We've seen it with the Houthis in Yemen. Their game plan is that they try and push the boundaries and see what they can get away with in terms of mischief-making, meddling and destabilisation. We've seen it in Britain as well, with a lot of assassination plots on British soil that, thank God, have been foiled so far. And the only way to prevent that from escalating is by delivering some proper deterrence in the region on Iranian soil. It's been known for quite some time. That
I don't
would be
agree.
The way
No.
to
I really don't agree with you. I don't agree with you.
Jake, pause there. Yasmin, briefly come back before we move on.
No, sorry. I'm sorry. You keep picking on Iran. I hate the Iranian regime. Absolutely hate it. I'm a Shia Muslim. I hate it. Yeah? But I also hate the Saudis. And the Saudis, because the West sucks up to Saudi Arabia, you don't mention the role Saudi Arabia has played, not just in what's going on in Yemen and those areas, but here they've totally corrupted the Islam we used to know. So this is not just Iran, it's Iran and Saudi Arabia.
I think what it does show is as the front of the eye says, you know, there is the concern, one, about food prices, but two, that it is expanding out and it's bringing in a whole load of other regional conflicts that perhaps people hadn't thought that much about or hadn't paid a lot of attention to for a while. We'll park that there, both of you, because I know you could talk about that all night, and move on to politics a little closer to home, the front of the Mirror. The Mirror says, we want an election. 2/3 of the public say Sunak should call it by the summer at the very latest. Jake, do you think we will see an election spring, summer, or do you think it's going to be autumn? I mean, it could even be next year, but that seems a little unlikely.
Well, frankly, I think that the more the Mirror and the Mirror's readers call for an election, the less likely there is to be one anytime soon. The reason for that is that people on the left want an election because they want to win it, and they know that Labour is very, very likely to win. They want that to happen sooner rather than later. But the more the Tories look at the same kind of polls, they're going to want to cling on for as long as possible to put as many measures in place to ensure the longevity of certain Tory policies into the next Labour government. And so I think that this is, look, Labour is almost certainly going to win the next election. The Tories are not polling very well. Labour is 14 points ahead, according to the Mirror. 2/3 of people want this election to happen by the summer, at least according to the Mirror and its readers. And 62% of people think that life apparently has got worse since 2010, which doesn't reflect very well on the Tories at all. So I do think that the more people on the left want an election, the less the Tories are likely to give them one anytime soon.
And Yasmin, is it, do you think that it's Rishi Sunak's, case that he needs to keep going for as long as possible in the hope that he's got longer to show what he can do and the economy has longer to recover?
Trying to have secret talks with Cummings shows his desperation. I don't think there'll be an early election. I think, we've heard Labour Party frontbenchers saying it's going to be May, it's the biggest the least well-kept secret and so on. I don't think it'll happen till the autumn for the reasons Jake has said.
Very briefly before we go, The Guardian, its front page, this is about the Ofsted bowing to pressure, halting inspections. They're going to be halted until assessors are properly trained. Now, they did announce this back in December, I think. Yasmin, I mean, for parents, obviously nobody wants something like that happened to Ruth Perry to happen again. It's just ghastly, isn't it? But parents also need a way of comparing schools, and schools need a way of knowing whether they're doing well or not.
But, we didn't have this always. This was Michael Gove's bringing competition into schools, basically, was the idea. And before him, there was another minister, I can't remember who brought it in. Actually, we need to know the good schools and the bad schools, but not with one-word judgments and these terrible league tables which tell you nothing.
It's
the school was
nature,
brilliant,
isn't it?
actually.
Yeah.
The school was brilliant. And this destruction of a head teacher because of a one-word judgment, it's wrong.
Right, we're going to take a short break. Jake, we'll come to you first next time. After the break, we'll be looking at the story, including this one on the front of the Daily Mail, which reports that police are investigating the first case of virtual rape. This is in the metaverse.
Sky News. From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Mandatory evacuation, you must leave!
For many people, Harvey is far from over. Christchurch has been changed forever by what happened here.
There was a river of blood coming out of the mosque. That's a scene that you don't forget.
Ida has certainly left its mark on New Orleans.
It just feels heartbreaking.
We help you understand the world with us. We are standing on the supply line right into the heart of America's opioid crisis. I've reported from around the world and around the UK. Are you trying to run me over, Sir Philip?
No, go away.
Look like it, sir. Will you respond to those who've made accusations, Sir Philip?
Can you go away?
Joe Biden knows the celebrations are over, and this is a country in crisis.
You don't want to be remembered this way. You always want to be remembered as something positive.
It is almost impossible to predict where these fires will go next. This gives you an idea of the strength of those winds, strong enough to bend and twist metal.
Do you regret the tweet, Gary?
There's no sign, publicly at least, of either side being willing to give ground. How do you reassure the public that all of these mistakes wouldn't be made again? I'm Greg Milam, and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview, and joining us in the studio we have the I columnist Yasmin Alabai-Brown. We're also joined virtually by the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons. We're going to kick off this half with the Daily Mail, and this extraordinary front page. This is the first police probe into what they're calling a virtual rape. A young girl attacked by several men. Now, this is in an online video game, Jake, so not a physical attack, but she was wearing a headset, obviously immersed in the game, and a massively traumatic experience for this child.
This is the strangest story I've come across in quite some time. It was a child under the age of 16 who was apparently gang raped in the metaverse while wearing a headset by a group of other users, I suppose. And it's being investigated by the police. Apparently, she suffered some severe emotional trauma after being subjected to this. I mean, so many questions. First, I mean, you know, how's it possible to rape anybody in the metaverse? I don't know. I've never been in it. I've got no idea. You know, surely she could have taken the headset off. I mean, there's so many. I mean, who was doing it? I mean, there's so many questions about this. It's very, very disturbing indeed. It did say that in the story that according to the NSPCC, 15% of kids between the age of 5 to 10 have used the metaverse with a headset at least once, but only 6% use it daily. So it doesn't seem like it's a very widespread practice. Thank heavens. But this is really weird and bizarre and very disturbing indeed.
It's really disturbing, isn't it, Yasmin? You know, I've got teenage boys. They do game a lot and they do wear headsets, and you don't know what they're doing in that virtual world. They're sitting there at a chair, but, you know, you don't know what's actually going on.
And I can imagine getting so into it that it's more real than the real world. And the trauma feels real. Of course, not physical rape. But I can just imagine how you can get so psychologically destabilized when you've entered that world And we don't have enough people who've done research or who are monitoring what children, this world children, are entering. But I am, like Jake, baffled by the story too. I mean, what are the police going to investigate? Who are they going to investigate? Virtual characters?
And what is the crime?
It's really complicated. I think it's really, really complicated.
It is. Jake, do you think that the tech companies need to be doing more? I mean, you said, how could you do this in the virtual world? But the kind of behaviours that people are able to carry out in these games, I mean, we've known for a long time games like Grand Theft Auto, for example, have quite violent scenes and have very high age ratings when you try and buy these games. A lot of these games are 18s. I mean, do we need to ask questions about whether or not they should actually be being produced?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems incredible to me that a tech company could produce an all-consuming game that you access with a headset in which it's possible for in which it's possible to have sex, let alone for somebody to have sex against their will without their consent. It just seems to me to be astonishing that they could have done that without anybody raising any flags, either in the company or in the regulators, or at a federal level in America, or governmental level, or EU level here. The whole thing just beggars belief. It's just astonishing to me.
OK, from gloomy story, let's move on to a jolly one. Front of The Guardian, front of lots of pages, is Luke Littler, the 16-year-old, who's doing fantastically well. He's through to the semi-finals of the darts. I mean, I don't know a lot about darts.
Me neither.
Yasmin has admitted she doesn't as well, but you've got to sort of admire his chutzpah, haven't you?
Yes, and it's great. We had that very young girl doing fantastically well at chess the other day, 8-year-old. I love it when young people are not in this mad virtual world and are doing something that's real and wholesome. So well done. Well done.
I mean, Jake, do you think this is going to get a lot more younger people into the sport? I mean, perhaps a lot of people might think that darts, or arrows, as we used to call them, is perhaps more of an older generation's pastime. But might we see a resurgence amongst the young?
I think definitely. I mean, darts does have that image, doesn't it? A pint in the hand, a beer belly, men grouped around the board in a pub. But this guy, Luke the Nuke Littler, aged just 16, looks set possibly to scoop the £500,000 prize and become a world champion. And what could be more inspiring for young people than that?
Yeah, well, fantastic. Best of luck to him. We're all going to be paying a lot more attention to darts over the next few days than perhaps we might have done. Jake and Yasmin, thanks so much for taking us through your choices. We'll be hearing back from you in half an hour's time with another selection, so thank you both very much for that. In the meantime, let's get a look at the weather.